So let us go ahead and start the course by creating a button which will help us understand a few concepts. So I'm going to go ahead and create a very simple button right here, which is just going to return us a development which says I am a button, right? And whenever I click on this, we increment a counter. So we can create a counter, or maybe like we can name it counter, set counter real quick with a useState hook and set it to 0, right? And you can set the counter right here. So what you want to do is whenever you click it, you want the set counter to increment the counter. So once we do that, you can go ahead and embed this button, let's say right here. Now we can actually get rid of this whole thing and this thing. So we will have something like this, right? So I am a button with a 0 means this is a, this is a simple counter, and you can embed this button as many times as you want, and you're going to see that you get multiple such buttons. Now, let's say you want to have your custom logic as well. Whenever you pass in a single prop, or you want to customize the appearance of this. So let's say you want to have a size property which says, or maybe like color, not really size, which says black. This one says blue, and this one says green, right? So sure, you can go ahead and accept the props now, and you can start applying the props. Not really color, but maybe like something like style, and then you can say color is props.color, right? So you can do that, all that logic stuff here. But what about, let's say you want to pass in some common properties to these three buttons, right? So let's say I want to have increment of 2, and let's say something else, underline as true, right? So the way you can do it is, of course, we can first of all make this work by saying this is 1, instead of 1, this is props plus increment, and then underline just means that text decoration is props dot underline. Then it means we need underline, otherwise undefined, right? We don't really want to set this property. So you can see for all three buttons we have underline and increment of 2. So this works fine. Now the way you can pass these properties is, of course, you can write them one by one, but what you can see is because you repeat them so many times, you can actually take them out, right? So you can take them out completely, and you can say const props is an object which is having these as the value, right? And of course you will need to specify a comma. Then you can destructure these props like this, and this is equivalent to the thing which we wrote before. And you can see now if I refresh, the effect is still the same. The increment is 2 and the buttons and the text is underlined, right? So the reason it works is because under the hood, what happens is that this JSX code right here, this JSX code gets converted into react.create element calls, right? So your props, the way they are passed is, for example, this button is created something like this, and this second object right here is your props, right? So when you do something like this, you are actually passing these as the props. So if you do, let's say prop 1 is 100, this is equivalent of writing button prop 1 equal to 100, right? So this is equivalent. So the reason you can destructure this is because, think about it, if you're passing it as a prop, you are actually doing a destructuring of an object here, right? And from ES6 we know that this destructuring will result in a proper object again. So JSX will do a destructuring and it will result in props being passed. Now this follows the object rules again similarly. So if you have something like a color of black here, for example, and if you save this, refresh this, you're going to see this does not affect anything. But if you try to move these props right here from, instead of at the starting to the end, you can see now that all props turn back black, right? And the reason for this is because in JavaScript, you know that if you have an object, something like this, which has a property x1, and if you create an object 2, which has a property x2, but you destructure object, then this destructuring, if this is later, this would rewrite this property, right? So finally, object 2.x is also 1. However, if this is before the initialization of a duplicate property, this one would overwrite any other value, right? Similarly, if you have x3, something like this, if you have an object like this, can you guess what's the final x value in object 2.x? Well, yes, you guessed it right. It should be object 2.x is in fact 3. So yeah, this is not so advanced pattern, but I believe you should know about how this works, the destructuring property, because it is useful when you have a lot of properties, first of all, and it is useful when you have a lot of common properties across a lot of components, right? So that's how you can use it. If you have, let's say, a bunch of properties, sure, you can have an indentation and everything, but if those bunch of properties are shared with a lot of other components, then it's better to extract them out in a separate object and then use it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Hope you understood something new. I'm going to see you in the next one.